Boa tarde a todos. Good afternoon, everyone. We would like to welcome, Circo de Ideias would like to welcome everyone to this seminar, Open Source 2010. Gostaríamos de agradecer a Circo de Ideias aos nossos parceiros, aos nossos patrocinadores, todo o apoio institucional e as várias pessoas que nos ajudaram a montar todo este evento que nos momentos que correm não é fácil, mas pronto, estamos aqui para dar início ao seminário. Queria chamar ao palco o Luís Tavares Pereira, em representação da Ordem dos Arquitetos, Secção Regional Norte, nossa parceira neste evento. Obrigado.
Okay, boa tarde. I'm going to be even faster. I'm just going to speak in English. And first of all, as representing the Portuguese Order of Architects, the Northern Chapter, from the first moment when Circo de Ideias came to us asking for our help and our support to this project, of course we said yes. And we also want to thank Casa da Música. In the years that we've been working together, we have always found a haven at this house for architecture, and this is particularly important as we see architecture as an open culture and open to society. And this is basically what is most important. And if you look at the curricula of all the people involved, very little is architecture in solely architecture. In fact, most people do more than one thing, several things altogether. In fact, this is what we think is most important, and as a message, because the world is changing, the way we work is changing, and this is one way that we should look at. Thank you very much.
Boa tarde a todos. Gostaríamos de, mais uma vez, eu sou o comissário deste evento e gostaria de agradecer a todos por terem vindo. Nós esperamos que o seminário esteja à altura das vossas expectativas e, por motivos técnicos, nós vamos ser muito breves nesta pequena apresentação. Vamos passar já de seguida a palavra a Cecil Balmond, que irá fazer uma apresentação, e em seguida será entrevistado por Hans-Ulrich Obrist, diretamente de Londres. Pedimos desculpa mais uma vez por esta alteração. We would like to thank to all the speakers, and especially to Cecil Balmond, who has engaged this challenge we proposed him in this difficult task, and we would like to say that we are really happy, and it's truly a dream come true to have this conference here. We will pass now to Cecil Balmond, that will start his talk. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Welcome everybody, and thank you all. Thank you first, Circo de Ideias, for organizing this, and thank you to all of you coming. I understand it's a national holiday here for 4 days, so it's nice of you to make the effort to get here in a Saturday afternoon with the World Cup as well. Also, a special thank you to everyone else, the speakers who have come from all over, and Sanford Quinter, who made the journey all the way from America. We have a good program for you, and we hope it will be an exciting day. I have to start soon because Hans-Ulrich Obrist he was to be here, but he couldn't due to last-minute problems, so he will be on Skype and hopefully listening. But he has a set end date at end time, so I will start now. What I wanted to do to open, in a way, this seminar is to talk about the 3 conceptual models that we design within, as I see it. The first is the classical model, the inheritance from Greece, if you like, and the post and beam language. And of course, as material science grew, the columns all not needed, but we have frames, and the frames multiply. But essentially, the language of the conceptual model of a classical model, as I see it, is centered, it's symmetric based, and we work from a border to come down, gridding up space. The vitality of the early Greek inventions have been lost, and we are working within reductive model, basically. We grid down and we trap space. And that's been the model for 2,000 years, basically. That's mainstream architecture still practiced like that. But for the last 50 years, there has been a growing trend to shift the center, conceptually, to start a process of distortion. At first, the move slightly away from the center allows more fluid form, more oblique form in the 50s, 60s, but gradually, progressively, the center keeps moving away and a distortion sets in, more and more frantic, and the simple gaps start to open and these start to skew and angle, but still within a border framework, and you know where it's coming from. And so the extreme condition of the distorted model leads to then fragmentation, breakup of the form. And then, and at its explicit most of, I think, pure distortion here. The tower tectonic wants to rise in a way, in a seamless way, but then it's a pure distortion. And I find that these extreme conditions, as the center has moved conceptually over the last 50 years, but within a border, that it's like pushing a ball up a hill. The reference point, the classical point, the point of rest, of legacy, is at the bottom of the curve. But as you push the ball up, removing it from its center point of rest, you know more and more effort has been made, and you know you're pushing way up, and you know that it wants to go back. In other words, critically, you know the derivation is coming from. It's nothing new, it's just a new face and a distortion on the model. Quite opposite to that is what I want to talk about today, is the flip curve, where the ball's at the top of a hill in a position of instability with an unknown part before it. So you have to put your trust in something beyond your own instincts to let it go. And the classic example of that, or if you like, the reflection of these three conceptual models in structure. Oh, sorry, I forgot. Yeah, if I go back here. So the flip curve is where the center now has moved out. So the center is beyond a boundary. There is no boundary to contain a center as such, and it becomes a center of organization. And it's a self-centering object that keeps ordering itself as it goes along. And that leads to three structural models. The anatomy of the classical is wholly determinate, post and beam. The distorted models start, the beam elements distort, the columns distort, the posts start inclining, various things happen. But essentially they're still within that language. The center leaving a point of reference, leaving a border and self-organizing leads to a complex cascade of events, sequences of space being made, and structures that cascade one on the other. And so a classic example of this cascade is the Serpentine Pavilion of 2002, which I did with Toyo Ito. And you can see that there is no primary sense of beam or post or anything. It's one environment of meshing and a complete network surrounding you. And within the lines of the network, you get embedded lines of extra strength, but there's not explicit structure, it's implicit in the whole network. And then by an architectural device of spacing out the cladding, we let the lines run through so that the metaphor is velocity, focusing on these crossing lines and the puzzle that it sets in space. So if you dematerialize the coffers, then you get that. And if you take away the material of the steel and fold it outwards, you get the abstraction that was the template. And that in turn was compiled by just this line, from a half this side to 1/3 the other side, then repeating it, and then multiplying it leads to this complex pattern. So there is the root, and if you like, this whole project was made by this first line without any knowledge of where it would lead, but the assumption being that if you kept multiplying it, a form would emerge with a complexity that you could never second guess, and you could never draw by hand either. Because the aesthetic is not being governed by your own assumptions of space and pattern legacy. It's coming from another abstract, rigorous engine that pushes you into a new territory. And having got there, then you interpret and translate into architecture. And it's interesting that each of these squares start breaking the original boundary. And symmetry breaking is a classic of emergent forms. So the ground gets put in, the lines all get extended, cut, folded, and finally connected. And so these kind of methods where you feed back is also highly sensitive to the beginning point. Anyone who studied chaos theory knows that, and here I found it under my hands as it was self-evident. This was the original trace, half to a third within a square. But if I took the inclination of the line and just flattened it more, slipped it down, you get something completely different. You get a kind of cyclone pattern. And if I had cut the corners out, folded it up like I did the other one, then you would have had a roof that would have been swirling with a pattern, and the sides of the walls would have been all angled and steep in some special way. And if I use the same half to a third, but on different geometrical figures, this is an octagon, the center starts opening up. So I tried it on a 20-sided figure, and then you end up braiding like a bracelet at one scale, or if it was 1 kilometer wide, this would be a space station with a rigorous 3-stranded structure holding it together. So what the algorithm does is it's a scaleless template. And what happens moving it into a form is a crucial decision you make at the idea of scale. So, and scale then immediately is dependent on material to give a structural configuration. So structure, unlike the traditional way, where it's one of the first things you start to think about, it's the very last thing that I ever think about. I first think of pattern and its configuration or connectivity. And based on that, I choose the scale I'm going to work at. Am I working around the wrist, or am I working at a kilometer space station? That configuration then decides at that scale, whichever scale, then the material comes in, and material with scale and connectivity leads to the anatomy of a structure. And if you zoom out though, there's the pavilion, that little black dot. You see about 100 meters up, looking down, you see the principal organization now. It's symmetric, but open-ended. And when you break the boundaries we set, the classical model boundaries, when you go out of them, you start to get rotations